Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Well, we're not off to a great start this morning. All right, I've returned all the equipment to, I think, the state it was in prior to the attempts with the new laptop to produce videos. I apologize for the last couple of videos have been a little rough to watch, and even audio-wise, there were chunks that got dropped. Hopefully, I'll have better luck today as I've reconnected everything. I think we'll be good. Anyway, I've just recorded about a half-hour video and realized that I hadn't clicked the correct button. So I'm going to start over. You know, I ad-lib all of this, so sorry, that blah, blah, blah is lost forever. We're going to start chapter 2 in the Lankavatara. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your practice. Hopefully this video will go better than the last two, and we'll be back on track as we were doing okay before. I was just hoping for better. That computer, as I said earlier, but you didn't get to see because I didn't record it. That computer we've invested in it, so it's definitely going to be part of the production chain. It's just going to replace an old computer that really I've abandoned, but now we'll have this nice machine to do visual and audio work as well as post-production, so it's definitely going to be in use. I was just hoping for something more powerful to handle the long-form videos here. All right, all that being said, here we go with chapter 2. At that time, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, who had visited all the Buddha lands, together with all the Bodhisattvas, rose from his seat by the power of the Buddhas, drawing his upper garment up over one shoulder, placing his knee on the ground with folded hands, remember, turning in the direction of the emancipated one, respectfully saluted him, gasho, right? Not, and praised him with the following verses. So, first of all, let me explain the confusion of that first paragraph, because this is a constant in Buddhist literature. How much the translation has to do with it, and how much just the teaching, the form of the teaching in the thousands of years of the history of sermons of Buddhism apply to the people being discoursed versus the capacity of the teacher. There's this duality. Sorry to keep using that word, but there it is in the writing itself. First, we describe Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, who's visited all the Buddha lands, is all the Bodhisattvas. Obviously, this is about the mind. It's about mental states. So, Bodhisattva Mahamati is a stand-in, a personage, a type of mind that is quite experienced, right? Been to all the Buddha lands, is all the Bodhisattvas. Well, this speaks to a large capacity of all humanity, all sentient minds, let me say it that way. But we're going to whittle it into this one personage. And then immediately following that statement, suddenly it's one person with his garb over his shoulder, kneeling on his right knee, like it's just a person. But understand that that's an invented personage that's going to take the form of a person in order to have this dialogue with Buddha. And what is Buddha? That's not a person either. It's the force of life, the engine of life that is the entire universe. So what we're going to witness here is a conversation in the Lankavatara between an earthbound experience and an enlightened experience. That kind of changes things, doesn't it? So but in the form of personages, it allows us the luxury of sitting in our seats and watching this dialogue like a tennis match, bang, 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 right? But in actuality, it's our own mind we're investigating. That kind of changes the investment in the questions and the answers, yeah? So, because this is so respect-worthy and important, the dialogue that's answering the very doubts that we have in our own minds about what is enlightenment and what is not. Why am I here instead of there? Like it's a duality, but it's not, right? Let's investigate the nature of our mind wrestling with understanding the truth versus our comfortable attachment to the world, to thingness, yeah? So this is, in that way, this Lankavatara becomes an important exercise for us to witness our formations of doubts and obfuscation. How do we transcend that? And the Lankavatara at one point, and I don't want to give it away, but there will be a major shift in the tone of our enlightenment of Shakyamuni Buddha, but as our enlightenment, speaking back to Mahamati and going, basically head slapping him and going, stop it. Stay tuned for that. All right. So this desire for enlightenment, this personage of, sorry, I get distracted, Mahamati, makes these following invocation. And please note, his invocations are going to be very repetitive with slight changes in terms. And this is going to be throughout this entire sutra. Watch. First, number one, as thou reviewest the world with thy transcendental knowledge and compassion, right, with your Buddha-ness, with your unattached perspective, experience, it is to thee like an ethereal flower, of which one cannot say whether it is born or destroyed, as the category of being and non-being is inapplicable to it. All right, he's just stating what we already know about enlightenment, that it's an eye of experience that sees and experiences in a far different way than a samsaric mind experiences. He's describing the unattachment, right? Second, he says it again, but slightly different. As thou reviewest all things with thy transcendental knowledge and compassion, they are to thee like visions. They are beyond the reach of intellectual grasp, as the category of being and non-being is inapplicable to them. To whom? To them? To what? He's talking about all things. The world of form. Third, as thou reviewest the world with thy transcendental knowledge and compassion, reviewing the world, experiencing the world would be a better word. Reviewing implies a brain or a consciousness, but the consciousness, you see, again, we're stuck with this limit of the alaya. When you perceive the amala consciousness, which the Lankavatara is in denial of, or just doesn't know about, I should say, sorry, it keeps trying to put Buddha-ness in a function of samsara rather than Buddha-ness as a transcendent instantiator and observer of all eight consciousnesses, within and without samsara, within Bodhi, without Buddha, or outside of Buddha, but still within. Does that make sense? We'll go over it some more. It is to thee like a dream. Okay, so we've gone from ethereal to vision to dream, of which one cannot say whether it is permanent or destructible, as the category of being and non-being is inapplicable to it. So again, these words are trying to describe this process of enlightenment. The awakening is that everything is instantiated like little clouds of light that have a suchness of table, a suchness of chair, a suchness of camera, a suchness of computer, a suchness of book. They're all identifiable, but from the Buddha eye, the Buddha mind, we perceive in the moment the constant manifestation of energies that make this book. Not this book was made, born, and existed through the past to this moment and will continue to exist like it is a permanent thing. It feels like a permanent thing. That's our samsaric mental cognition and experience of book. And that's useful. That's fine. That's real in samsara. But with a shift of mind, Buddha-ness understands that this book is constantly being constructed moment after moment after moment after moment. And with each moment, and here's kind of a linking key, because I'm not trying to be mystical here. With each passing moment, this book that I see as solid and existing from past to present to future is not the same book moment to moment. It is, if you could see the minutiae of the energies collected to make the individual atoms of this book, it's degrading, it's changing, it's collecting gases from the air, it's the paper starting to split and crack. It is on its way out. With every single moment, it exists and it deteriorates. Everything in Buddha-ness, in Buddhahood, in Buddha practice arises, decays, and disappears. Everything. It may be in a single moment, which it actually is, if we could see to that minutia, but certainly over time, collectively, it has arisen, it is decaying, and it will disappear. Guaranteed. But it's one thing to know that intellectually, and this is a big point of the Lankavatara. Okay, I understand that. I kind of see it, but, I understand that intellectually. Wow, that's really deep. But it's a different thing altogether to adjust your mind so that you witness that activity moment to moment. When you witness that activity moment to moment, then you experience that activity moment to moment. Suddenly, the solidity with which we tend to experience life, which is the source of our attachments and our stress and our anxieties, when we see everything in that suchnesses, then there's nothing to grasp. The reality is that it's mostly not there. That the there-ness of this is a perceptive reality, but if we shift our perception to experience this book as a constant suchness, it kind of dances. There's nothing really to hold on to there with that mental understanding. Do you see? right? You heard your science teacher or somebody, a clever friend, explain to you how there's so much space between electrons and protons and quarks and muons and on and on and on and on, that actually everything that we experience, from steel to water to gases, is made up of far more space than it is actual stuff. And then in Buddhism and in science now, with quantum and field theory, we know that even the stuff is just forms of energy with different tendencies and conditions. And we begin to understand that everything is mostly nothing. No thing. Boy, it sure feels like a thing, Sifu. Yeah, but mentally we understand that that's just a construction that keeps on happening until it doesn't. Seeing that space is not what our eyes and brain are designed to do. Our eyes and brain are designed to conceive of objects in order to see. We can't see if there's nothing to see. So our apparatus is designed to interact with objects like ourselves. So we perceive stuff. And that's okay. That's samsara. What we're trying to do is shift our mind so that we understand and see, as you hear a lot in the rhetoric, with the Buddha eye, that what we're seeing, if we can just shift our understanding a little bit, is just clouds of energy with certain suchnesses, the 10 factors, appearance, right? Everything is karmic. Everything is energy in certain form. That's what the 10 factors are when we do Gangyo, right? Nyoze-in, Nyoze-en, Nyoze-kan, Nyoze-ho, all the factors of instantiation, moment to moment. Wham, wham, wham. That is what our samsaric mind interrelates with. Unfortunately, that interrelation we self-impose valuations, identifications, and we want more and we're afraid of losing. And there's all our stresses and all our anxieties invented in this samsaric existence. Even our own lives arise and take tremendous amounts of training and then start to decay, a long decay toward something we fear we're going to lose this life. And we suffer and we die and boop, we're gone. Because the only constant in all of that is the sentient mind. And if we can change that sentient mind, influence it to start to perceive this whole process as fully complete in every moment, then what is there to fear? What is there to look back upon? All of it is just decoration around the magnificence of the entirety of life process, Buddha-ness. Make sense? All right. How are we doing time-wise? And we haven't lost any frames yet. Boy, I hope this goes better today. So I'm tired, I'm sure you are, of those glitches, yeah? All right. Number 4, in the Dharmakaya, whose self-nature is like a vision or a dream, what is there to praise? When no thought arises as to the existence or as to not having no self-nature, then there is praise. So, barring the translation, what's attempted to describe here is this release, this letting go, this awakening, right? So when he says, whose self-nature is like a vision or a dream, He's referring back to what he already said. When we learn, in the Dharmakaya, when we learn to release the subjective experience of life and move to an objective experience of life, when no thought arises as to existence or as to not having that, so you stop struggling with, is that real or is that made up? If you transcend, which is the word we keep using here, in other words, shift our paradigm to not the book, the suchness of the book, the constant instantiation of the book, though it is changing before my eyes, is still useful as it is. But I know that it is a transient thing, not a permanent thing. That's all we're talking about here, a mental shift. Then that experience of not questioning that anymore, but just simply understanding, then that alone is praise, because you release all your stress and anxiety about it. You're just with it. How amazing. There's the praise. It's not something you have to enact. It just happens. 5, of things whose appearance is not visible because of its being beyond the senses and their objects. There's that object sense thing, right? In order to experience sight consciousness, ear consciousness, feeling consciousness, there has to be something to perceive. Without the thing to perceive, then the consciousness is meaningless. It has no function. And that is the whole activity of samsara, the entire universe. This engine of instantiation provides objects for the senses to perceive. That, just perceiving that alone is enough to make you sit the hell down. Try to imagine the implications of that. How can it be praised or blamed, O Muni? It's the process. You can't pick part of the process and go, that's better than that. It's the whole process that's amazing, right? With thy transcendent knowledge and compassion, there we go with transcendental again. With thy transcendental knowledge and compassion, which are above form, states it a little more profoundly, right? That transcendent knowledge, that experience of the little sparks and clouds of light, the suchnesses, is outside the grasping of form, isn't it? It's more related to the energy and formation, but not the instantiation, the potential rather than the manifestation. So that transcendental knowledge and compassion, the Buddha-ness, which are above or outside of form. See the distance, the breaking away from the attachments? Thou comprehendest the egolessness of things and persons, and art thyself always clean and free from the hindrances of passion and knowledge. Well, there it is. A whole nother set of words to describe the same thing. This breaking away from the attachments while still maintaining observation and involvement in the manifestations. Simply paradigm shift, observing them all as suchnesses. This is the break point. This is the awakening. This is the being in Buddha-ness versus being in samsara, right? Thou dost not vanish in nirvana, right? It's not about annihilation. It's not about, let me get rid of this body, let me get rid of all these suchnesses and be no thing, namana. That's not Buddha-ness. That's namana. Nor is nirvana abiding in thee. So this process of liberation isn't a thing to behold. It's simply a moment-to-moment experience, a shift in the mind. For it transcends the duality of knowing and known and of being and not being, because that's not the issue anymore. That's only an issue for those seeking release from, emancipation from attachments. But once achieved, it's not a choice, it's simply the truth. Those who see the Muni so serene and beyond birth and death will be cleansed of attachment, stainless both in this world and the other. And I don't like that sentence, and you know why. Both in this world and the other, that has to be a translation problem. This idea of self and other, because that's the root of the problem. How can something so eloquent resolve with the last statement being stainless in both this world and the other? It should have been translated more like the Vimalakirti, right? Where we learned that there is no difference between this land and the Buddha land. The Buddha land is just like flipping a filter on a lens and seeing accurately what it is you're in. This moment-to-moment process of suchnesses, just these instantiations of formation. Formations being energy with work, expressing itself in all manner of potential, manifesting simply to express its potential. Magnificent. But all of it encapsulated within life. That's Buddha-ness, right? No qualifiers, just the suchness of, it's like putting sea monkeys in an aquarium. Little brine shrimp, right? Some of you might get that. So that this world and the other, there is no other. It's a shift of perception. This land and this land as Buddha land. It's a cleansed, sentient mind. Same place, same time. Second part. Where are we time-wise? Okay. And are we looking? We're looking good. Oh, man. That's a bit of a relief. Let's hope it stays this way. At that time, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, praising the emancipated one with such verses as these, made his own name known to the emancipated one. His own name, his own label. Yeah. I am Mahamati, emancipated one, and am well versed in the Mahayana. Well, yes, we'd like to think so. I wish to ask 108 questions of thee who are most eloquent. There's that number 108. It crops up all over history. And I have not found a definitive scholarly account of when it became 108. But there's 108. There's 108 beads in the malas. There's 108 beads in our juzu, but albeit 112 because we add the 4 great leaders of the bodhisattvas, right, which are also on that mandala behind me. But 108 comes up over and over and over again in many religions, philosophies, rituals. 108 seems like a number that indicates exhaustive investigation, knowledge, truth. It's like if you ask 2 questions, you know more than asking 1 question. If you ask 20 questions, you become much more expert on the subject, assuming they're answered. But somehow at 108, you can't question the knowledge you have. You've attained. It's that kind of a thing. But here it is. So I wish to ask 108 questions of thee who art most eloquent. obviously the 108 in this case, again, says, I'm going to ask you exhaustively questions to resolve doubts, as you're the one to answer them. You would know. You're Buddha. You're enlightened, right? Having heard these words, the Buddha, in this case, Shakyamuni is the interlocutor, but referring to him as Buddha means that mental Buddha-ness, not Shakyamuni the man, the best knower of the world, looking over the whole assembly, spoke to the son of the Sugata, saying thus, Ask me, son of the victorious and Mahamati. You ask, and I will instruct you in self-realization. 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 This is the Lotus Sutra, not this. But aren't we pointing to the Lotus Sutra already in earlier Mahayana? And aren't we saying that all of Buddhism is about accomplishing what Shakyamuni did? This is how you too can awaken? I mean, it hasn't changed from the get-go. The only thing that has changed is the mental qualities, capabilities of the people being taught. And in the Lotus Sutra, we are being taught by Shakyamuni expressing, this is how I did it. No longer holding back or playing games with how our capacity is. We have the full capacity. He's just saying, okay, now you need to do it. Just do this. You're capable. That's the Lotus Sutra. But anyway, the concept of self-realization has always been there. There's no handing out of Buddha licenses. There's no beseeching or praying for something other to imbue you. This is all about self-realization. It's right here in the Lanka and many other sutras. Okay. At that moment, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, who was given by the emancipated one the opportunity to speak, prostrated himself at the feet of the emancipated one and asked, how can one be cleansed of false intellection? Whence does it arise? And how can one perceive errors? Whence do they arise? Well, that's a lot of questions in one, isn't it? He goes on. Whence come lands, transformation, appearance, and philosophers? Wherefore is the state of imagelessness and gradations, the gradations, and whence are the sons of the victorious? Where is the way of emancipation? Who is in bondage? By what is he redeemed? What is the mental state of those who practice the dhyanas? Whence is the triple vehicle? What is that which is born of causation? What is effect? What is cause? Or that which works? And there it is. That which works. What have I always said karma is? Energy plus work. Energy plus action. Work of some sort. When the field of electrons, not a good name for it. When this field of energy that exists in a certain state, at a certain tendency, when the conditions are right, instantiates electrons to join up with protons and neutrons. When does that happen? How does that happen? That is karma. That formation is karma. And it results in an expression of that karma form. Whence the doctrine of duality? Whence does it arise? Is it in the moment of that karma formation that duality exists? Yeah. But we know that. Mahamati doesn't know that. And he's spewing a ton of questions, isn't he? Wherefore is the tranquilizing exercise of formlessness, and that of complete extinction? Wherefore the extinction of thoughts? And how is one awakened from it? How does action rise? Whence is the behavior of those who hold the body? Whence this visible world? Whence the conditions? Whence the entrance upon the stages? He's just vomiting questions, all profound questions, trying to identify, there's the problem, trying to identify the moments when certain things, what? Become real? Boy, Mahamati, you are stuck in samsara. You don't realize, no matter how much you've studied and your education is about Mahayana, you've missed it entirely. You're still completely enraptured in attachment, isn't he? He doesn't see it. He's questioning enlightenment via samsara. Well, show me where these things start. Show me where they begin. Show me how they begin. When do they become visual? When did it become real? And how do you let them go? How do you navigate back out of that? Okay, not invalid, but it speaks to his personage's state of mind, the obstacles he's facing, yeah? Who is it that breaks through this triple existence? What is the abode? What is the body? Where does that which is abiding arise? Whence comes the son of the Buddha? Again, this is all through a lens of samsaric experience, isn't it? Who attains the psychic faculties? The self-masteries, the samadhis. How is the mind tranquilized? Tell me, O bull-like victor. What is the alaya? And we're going to keep coming back to this eighth consciousness, aren't we? And whence the manovijnana? How does the visible world rise? Or come into being, right? How does it cease from being visible? Well, of course, there is no cessation of visibility. It's a different perspective on visibility. What are you seeing? You transcend what you see with the lower senses, consciousnesses, right? So you can see in the questions kind of little sprinkles of clues as to what's not being understood yet. But important to someone who's starting out in Buddhism who hasn't really delved into it deeply enough to understand this shift of experience, shift of mentality, right? Attitude and intent. Living in attitude and intent is far different from living in qualifying, judging, and so on. The passions, as it were. Whence are families and no families? What is meant by mind only? The setting up of marks, and whence the doctrine of egolessness? And this mind only is going to plague us a little bit. But please don't make the mistake of thinking that Buddha-ness is mind only. They're not the same thing. Buddha-ness exists and permeates through the universe, everything. It's not definable as a single thing. It's a complete and utter shift in experience. So don't make the mistake of thinking mind only, oh, that's Buddha. That's not what they're talking about. Remember, they don't have the ninth consciousness in their thinking yet. So they're still thinking that our karma is where Buddha-ness is located, and it is not. Our karma is our karma. Our karma is the engine of the universe. Our karma is the engine of thingifying, of identifying, of manifestations of energies. That is samsara, not Buddha. Why is there no being? Well, that's just a fallacy of language there. What kind of teaching is in accordance with popular thinking? That's psychology. How can one cease cherishing eternalism and nihilism? Yeah, how can someone stop cherishing or being passionate about those things as goals? Again, the foibles of samsara, yeah? How is it that you do not differ from the philosophers as regards appearance? You're just a man. Tell me, whence is the rise of the Nyaya school, its future? I mean, he's just, are we going to get all 108 here? Looks that way, my friends. Let's see, 80. Come on. Page turning karma. Well, it gets to 98. So far, we're going to read 98 different questions. And then he's finally going to get interrupted. Oh, here's a good one we can all relate to. What is meant by emptiness? What do you understand by momentary destruction? What is the womb? And whence is the stability of the world? These are all very particular, I would say, beginner questions, yeah? So Mahamati, who's supposed to represent a very well-versed Mahayana scholar, is asking of Buddha essential, though beginner questions. He's really describing or taking the opportunity to dissect what is Buddhism? What is your practice? What is this idea of self-enlightenment? What does it represent? How does it look? How does it differentiate from? And, you know, even in the language, you think, well, you can't ask that. We're not differentiating anything. That's the point. But I'm curious to see how the Lankavatara is going to express Shakyamuni's answer to all these questions. But so far, it looks pretty darn comprehensive, doesn't it? Let's continue, because I'm sure some of these will resonate with you, and others will seem, I hadn't really considered that was a problem. But it's interesting nonetheless, right, to see this laundry list of questions that different people might have at different moments that we might think, yeah, I'm not quite resolved on what I think that is. Let's see what this sutra says. Why is the world like a vision and a dream? Right? We say that all the time, but why? And I hate that why question, as you know. I would rather say, how is the world like a vision and a dream? That seems like a better question. And the second sentence, how does it resemble the city of the Gandharvas? Why it is to be regarded as like a mirage or like the moon reflected in the water? Tell me. So again, these are very, not only basic questions, but questions regarding the rhetoric of the teachings themselves. What are the elements of enlightenment? Whence are the constituents of enlightenment? Wherefore is a revolution and the disturbance of a kingdom? And how does the realistic view of existence take its rise? Again, where is this shift of perception? What does it look like? Where does it come from? How does it begin? What is meant by the world being above birth and death, or being like a flower in the air? What is that? It's very poetic. What does it mean? How do you understand it? Why do you regard it as being beyond words? How do you regard it as being beyond words? Again, that question, why? It's like a word I'd like to strike from the English language. It's so mamby-pamby, meaningless, wishy-washy. It really means nothing to ask why. It means absolutely nothing. And it brings nothingness and baloney along with its answers. They're all obfuscations. I really despise that word. How is it not subject to discrimination? How is it like the sky? Of how many sorts is suchness? Knowing what we know, that's an interesting question, huh? I'll say it again. Of how many sorts is suchness? Right? Because there's suchness of the universe, and then there's these individuations of suchnesses, like the book. But that's one step down the ladder into samsara, isn't it? That's distinguishing, that's discriminating this suchness from that suchness. Suchness is suchness. So, interesting question. How many sorts is suchness? Interesting. How manifold is the mind? How many paramitas are there? Whence is the gradation of the stages? What is the state of imagelessness? Wherefore is the twofold egolessness? How is one cleansed of the hindrances of knowledge? Of how many kinds is knowledge? Jnana. O leader, how many moral precepts are there and forms of being? Whence are the families born of gold and jewel and pearl? Of whom is speech born? Whence is the differentiation of beings? When does that happen? How does it happen? Whence are the sciences, offices, arts, and by whom are they made manifest? Of how many sorts are gathas? What is prose? What is meter? Of how many sorts is reasoning and exegesis? Exegesis. How many varieties of food and drink are there? Whence does sexual desire originate? Whence are there kings, sovereigns, and provisional rulers? Why is the sky blue? I mean, he's just going all over the place now, right? How does a king protect his domain? Of how many groups are heavenly beings? Whence are the earth, stars, constellation, and moon, and the sun? How many kinds of emancipation are there? Of the yogins? How many kinds of discipleship? And how about the masters? He's losing his mind now. How many kinds of Buddhahood are there? And how many of the Jataka tales? How numerous are the evil ones? How numerous are the heretics? You're answering a lot of these as I go, aren't you? The Buddhism is about the mind. Just keep going back there. What is meant by the doctrine that there is nothing but thought construction? Pray tell me, thou most eloquent one. Whence are the clouds in the sky, the wind? What is meant by recollection, by wisdom? Whence are the trees and vines? Tell me, Lord of the triple world. How do horses, elephants, and deer get caught? Wherefore are there fools and despicable people? Tell me, thou charioteer of the mind. Wherefore are the 6 seasons mentioned? What is meant by the Ichantika? Tell me, whence is the birth of a man, of a woman, of a hermaphrodite? He's questioning every manifestation of the process of life. He's saying, with all of this variety, with all of these things going on, how do you claim to be something outside of that? I understand the questioning, but some of it seems almost ridiculous, doesn't it? Kind of answers itself. But what's curious is, let's hear how Shakyamuni approaches awakening this questioner. How does one retrograde in the yoga exercises? How does one make progress in them? How many exercises are there, and how are men kept abiding in them? Tell me. Well, the answer is you shouldn't. That's a path to those people to eventually lead them to the wisdom to start chanting. But we're not there yet in the Lankavatara, are we? Beings are born in the various paths of existence. What are their specific marks and forms? How is abundance of wealth acquired? What are you calling wealth and abundance? All of this is very samsaric. It's surprising to hear this from a Mahayana, supposedly, scholar, yeah? But he's just vomiting questions that everyone would ask of Shakyamuni in his day. It's just, bleh, right? From every level, ignorant to Mahayana. So let's just go with it. We're only halfway through. Whence is the Shakya family, which is Shakyamuni's family, yeah? And the one born of Ikshvaku, whence is the Rishi long penance? What is taught by him? And this is the history of Shakyamuni himself. So it's getting kind of personal now. How is it that thou art thus apparent everywhere in every land, surrounded by such bodhisattvas of such various names and forms? Because we're talking about the mind here. He's giving it away. He's saying, I'm asking you, Shakyamuni, but he, Mahamati, is an imagination, right? He's a personage, and he's interlocuting with the Buddha, which is everyone in the universe. And he has the audacity to say, how come you're everywhere and you have everyone? Because this is a mental dialogue, yeah? Why is meat not to be eaten? That one will appear for several people that are still stuck on that one. Why is it forbidden? Well, it isn't. Whence was the carnivorous race born? That's a better question. Who eats meat? Why are the lands shaped like the moon, the sun, the Sumeru, the lotus, the swastika, and the lion? Tell me, wherefore are the lands shaped like capsized and upturned net of Indra, which is composed of all sorts of jewels? Wherefore are the lands shaped to form the lute and the drum, like flowers and fruits, like the sun and the moon, which are so stainless? Tell me, whence are the Buddhas of transformation? Whence are the Buddhas of maturity or recompense, reward? Whence are the Buddhas who are endowed with transcendental knowledge of suchness? Tell me, the three bodies of Buddha, right? Still doesn't have that straight. This is an earlier Mahayana teaching, so we can see all of the things that haven't been nailed down yet. Certainly not for these people. Why does not one attain enlightenment in the world of desire? Well, we do, but the very act of enlightenment puts a lid on, destroys the world of desire. Because the world of desire is the constructed world, yeah? Constructed of the energies, the karma. And the karma, the energies, the work still continues, but our sentient mind, our experience of it, is removed from attachment and becomes an observer, right? From subjective to objective. It's really simple in words. What is the meaning of your being enlightened in the akanishta by shaking off all the passions? He's asking the same question again, really. After my passing, will be the upholder of the discipline or doctrine. How long should the teacher abide? How long should the teaching continue? And you know, I've talked about this many times, and we have, again, this attachment of the person is the teacher, The teacher is really you. You are teaching you. The others we call teachers are facilitators. They're leading us to look more closely, giving us tools, giving us inspirations, giving us insights. Now we lost a few frames. I don't know where that is. And hopefully we're catching up to it. Why is this happening? What is frustration? Oh, gosh, we've gone long enough. All right, so we're leaving off at, was it 52? No. Yeah, okay. So, we will start up the next video at question 52. I know this is, I don't know if you feel the same way, but this is a little pedantic right now. Hopefully, we're just setting up the story. It gets more entertaining as you get into it. My recollection of the Lankavatara is much more of a dialogue-specific, one question, one answer. We will get to that. But so far, we can see that there's quite a comprehensive crapload of baggage that this Mahamati-ness has brought to the party. And that's interesting in and of itself. It says a lot about the level of questioning and lack of confidence or doubt at this particular time of this teaching of the Lankavatara, yeah? And most notable, I don't want to forget that the ninth consciousness isn't included in this dialogue. And that will undoubtedly unlock and answer much of this. And maybe we'll get to it by the time we finally hear from Shakyamuni, yeah? All right, in the meantime, please take care of your health. It's important, if for no other reason than for you to keep up your practice, which I'm immensely grateful and admiring of. So know that. Patrons, people who can even donate $1 or recurring on Patreon or through PayPal. You guys make this whole resource, the website, the videos, so on and so forth, the audio podcasts, books, mandalas, you make it all possible. So super gratitude to you guys. And if you can do that, if we can get to where we have enough funds in the Kun coffers to purchase a nice, powerful desktop so we can cease having these problems with the video creation, that will be a day to celebrate. And maybe I'll make some kind of an offer, some trinket or something to mark the occasion that we can all get. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. In the meantime, be kind to yourself, keep your practice strong, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay? Bye-bye for now.